What's that over there? Bring the ship closer. The merman stirred. He could faintly hear a commotion. There was yelling and the scampering of boots on wood as he saw the blurred silhouette of a whale inching towards him. No, he thought. It was too hard and too cold to be a whale. His vision cleared slightly, and he recoiled in fear, terror, and disgust all at once as a metal behemoth came to a halt mere meters from him. He barely saw the net soar through the air before it ensnared him. The prince in his rope prison was slowly brought up to the deck on the ship. He came face to face with a group of men. "What is that?" An old man with a pockmarked face asked. "I don't know," the man at the head of the pack said. The leader took a cautious step towards the prince. He narrowed his eyes as he studied the prince. "He looks human, almost," he concluded. "He's got gills," a sailor pointed out. "I know." The prince rubbed his eyes as the last remnants of his vision returned. Schools of fish were writhing around in similar prisons begging for their lives. The leader beckoned for a bearded slim man to approach the prince. The wiry man looked at the prince with awe as he furiously jotted down notes into a leather-bound notebook. "He isn't human," he said. "You don't need me to tell you that." "I want an expert opinion," the leader said. "How much do you think he'll sell for?" "Sell," said the scientist. "He's not human, but he looks human enough." "What if he's like us?" The captain grunted as he waved the scientist away. "Look, Captain, I'm saying that. Look, mister," he said. "You paid me to take you to the triangle because no one else would. But you didn't pay enough to undermine my authority on my ship. Do you understand?" "Yes, Captain," said the scientist. The captain grunted as he waved his hand to the man operating the crane. The crane shifted as the prince was plopped down next to a group of flopping fish. The crew surrounded the prince and watched as he tried to communicate to deaf ears. They cleared the area eventually. There was only so much entertainment they could derive from watching a half-dead half-fish half-man. Only the scientist stood there observing the prince. The scientist knelt down next to the prince. He took out a canteen and slipped it into the net. "It's salt water," he said. The prince looked at the man for a while and put the canteen to his lips. His throat cleared. He poured the rest of the water over the gills on his neck and stomach. The prince smiled. He gathered what remaining energy he could and pulled a puddle of water in front of the scientist. He waved his hands and the water shifted to create the shape of a man leaping off a giant whale. The prince pointed at himself. The scientist backed away. "I can't," he said. "The captain will kill me." The prince furrowed his brows as the scientist walked further away. "I can bring you water and food," the scientist said. "But I can't let you go." "I can't." The scientist shuffled off and the prince was alone. Journal entry? July 1. I am aware whoever's reading this will assume they have come across the journal of a madman. But believe me when I say we might have caught a merman. Today the sailors were on their usual bombing run, dropping dynamite into the sea to stun fish and catch them. After they threw the first stick, a school of fish surfaced? Along with what we thought was a person. What they hauled in was no person, yet he was strangely alike. 2 legs, 2 arms, pale pink skin with slick black hair. But he was obviously no man with the gills on his neck and stomach. I just brought him another canteen of seawater and rice wrapped in seaweed. A recipe I've learnt from my travels to Nippon. He thanked me by putting his palms together. A foreign gesture, yet not alien in parts of the world. This boy represents a world of mystery and perhaps the next stage in humankind's progress. I would love to speak to him more, but I fear the captain may be onto me. The next morning, the prince woke to a crowd of sailors staring at him. He sprung up with his remaining strength, and they jolted backwards. They shouted about him being alive and ran off. The captain remained by his side as he sauntered towards the prince. "You're still alive," the captain said. "And you look well." The prince narrowed his eyes as the man knelt down to match his gaze. "Our mutual friend wouldn't tell me how much you're worth," he said. "I don't think he knows either. But my quartermaster says that you might be an Atlantean, and you come from a city where gold rivers flow, silver rain falls, and platinum flowers bloom. All that and more. I want you to bring me there tomorrow. If not," the captain continued, "you die." At sundown, the scientist approached the prince. He brought out the same ball of rice wrapped in seaweed and a canteen and passed it to the prince. The prince gobbled up the rice and did his ritual of drinking and showering himself. "I saw the captain talk to you this morning," said the scientist. "What did he want?" The prince gestured, his throat being slit. "The captain said he would kill you? What could he want from you? Gold?" "Yes," said a voice behind the scientist. "Is that not what we all want?" The captain walked out of the darkness into the light of the scientist's lantern. "I knew he was too hydrated for a fish on land," he said. The captain pushed the scientist aside and knelt down to lock eyes with the prince. "Lead me to the gold tomorrow, or your new friend gets thrown to the sharks," said the captain. The prince mustered his energy and shot a stream of water at the captain. The large man bellowed with laughter as he wiped the trickle of salt water off his face. "Your friend dies tomorrow," said the captain. He punched the prince, and all went black. The prince woke up in his net. The scientist was dangling above the ocean in a cage that hung above the water by a rusty chain. A group of men had gathered to watch the execution. The captain strode up to the prince. "He dies unless you lead me to your city," the captain said. "Don't listen to him," yelled the scientist from his cage. The crew threw a bucket of water into his face. They cheered as the man choked. He locked eyes with the prince as his eyes shone with an idea. "Is that all you can do?" he yelled. "My underpants are barely wet." The men laughed even louder as everyone picked up a bucket and hurled water, rotten fruits, and fish viscera at the scientist. In a moment of surprising speed, the scientist stripped off his clothes, bunched it up, and pitched it at the prince through the gaps of the cage. The men watched as a ball of wet, smelly, bloody clothes soared in the air towards the prince with astounding accuracy, and the prince knew what to do. He drew all the water in the clothes and covered himself in a layer of salt water. The Atlantean formed a blade of blood and cut through the ropes of the net. Leaping forward, the seas connected with him again, and he was reinvigorated. He clenched his fist as he pointed it towards the group of men. A tendril of water shot up from the seas and swatted the bunch into the ocean. He turned to look at the captain, as the large man stood with his pistol out, slightly quivering. The captain turned to look at the scientist and squeezed the trigger, and bullets shot out of the barrel. The prince reacted with coolness as he willed a wall of water to shoot up in front of the scientist, slowing the bullet to a standstill. With his friend safe, the prince leapt forward and took the captain by his collar. He spun and tossed the captain into the sky. The prince turned his attention to the cage. He broke the bars off the cage and brought the scientist down to safety. The scientist collapsed onto the deck unconscious. The prince brought the man indoors and laid him onto the floor. He looked at his new friend for the last time and walked away. Journal entry? July 14. It's been an interesting few days, to say the least. It's been 2 days since the Ave Maria was found on the coast of Bermuda, and 10 since I woke up. The local harbormaster was, understandably, suspicious when he found me alone in a ship manned by 20 men. He suspected mutiny for a moment, I think, but logic prevailed, and he realized that a stickman couldn't take on a crew. I remember the merman still. He has, however, left no trace of his existence. The torn net, the broken cage, my notes and sketches. It's all gone. The only place where he exists is within the confines of my mind, that, and the seashell he left in my hand. I woke up naked as the day I was born, clenching a rainbow-colored seashell in hands. For every angle I look at it there is a different color. Despite almost dying, it has been an amazing month. I am the sole keeper of the knowledge that there is another world beneath us in the depths of the ocean. Even so, this is knowledge I will take to my grave. The secrets of the merman stay safe with me, so that the kingdom residing 20,000 leagues beneath sea stays safe from men like Captain Merryweather. I hope you are well, my friend. I hope you'll remember me like I remember you. The prince looked at the last pieces of the ship being towed onto the beach. He looked at the ship one last time as he swam back into the deep sea. It has been 3 months since his capture, and yet he found himself returning to the ship every now and then. His prison had been rotting on the shores of Bermuda since his escape, yet he could not forget the kindness of the human that saved his life. He hoped that the scientist would remember him, as he does. Perhaps one day we will walk on the same ground once again, he thought. He looked up and saw millions of white pinpricks in the sky. It was the same view he saw in his prison, but it looked better as a free man.